Welcome to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid. A set of conversations about our government, our politics, and the kind of country we aspire to be. And now, here's your host, Edwin Eisendrath, on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Okay, everybody, happy Saturday. By gosh, what a week it's been. What a week it's been. I'm going to make the case here at the beginning of this show that today's Republican Party is a criminally complicit threat to the United States. And I think it should be illegal, honestly. I think everyone in it can go, if they're conservatives, they should go start a conservative party. If they're fascists, well, they're just fascists. Look, this week, federal forces, untrained, overarmed, and determined to coerce Americans to accept Donald Trump's white Christian nationalist agenda of racially cleansing our cities. They are surging to Minneapolis. That's where one of them murdered Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother. 3 children, aged 6, 12, and 15, lost their mom. Now those children also have to cope with a government lying and slandering their dead mom. Without an ounce, not an ounce of humanity or evidence, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Kristi Noem, and the entire right-wing propaganda operation called Renee Good a domestic terrorist. They slandered her even before they bothered to look at the videos of her killing. Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent who killed Renee Good, is being protected by Donald Trump and his corrupt Justice Department. The FBI has broken all precedent and refuses to cooperate with local law enforcement authorities investigating the shooting. The president has vowed to have his back. We don't know where he is. We don't know if he's back out there patrolling more. This is disgraceful. Renee Good was murdered in front of dozens of witnesses. The shooting was captured in multiple videos. The folks in Minnesota will have plenty of evidence, no matter what the feds do. But it might not be enough, because according to the administration, their agents have absolute immunity. Yep, they can go shoot Americans and have no consequences. That is the position of the President of the United States. And now, Trump is surging more of them to Minneapolis. They aren't going there for the purpose of comforting a grieving city. They aren't going there in order to calm angry and frightened residents. They are going because they want forcibly to deny that they could ever be wrong. This is who they are. A day later, they shot 2 people in Portland, bringing to 50 the number of people they've shot during their raids. And on cue, the administration, without any evidence, called that shooting and those victims, well, they were Tren Agua members. BS. Do you remember, before the courts freed Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Donald Trump sat in the Oval Office and showed a picture of Abrego Garcia's hands. He pointed out tattoos on the man's knuckles and said they proved he was a Tren Agua gang member. BS. We now know those so-called tattoos were digitally added to the photo. They didn't exist, just like Abrego Garcia's gang affiliations didn't exist. It doesn't matter to the liar in the Oval Office and the liars who were around him. This is who they are. My God, Donald Trump says if Democrats win back the White House, he will be impeached. Well, amen to that. He is guilty of higher crimes and more misdemeanors than anyone who has ever sat in the Oval Office. He knows it. The whole country knows it. Even a partial list of his crimes is long. He tore down part of the White House. He carved his name on the Kennedy Center. He took foreign emoluments, also known in the modern world as bribes. He abused his pardon power. He corrupted regulatory authority to bring law firms and universities and major American corporations to heal. He ordered the murder of fishermen in the Caribbean. He launched an unauthorized war in Venezuela. He sent his overarmed, undertrained ICE thugs into American cities and gave them immunity for their crimes. He used tariffs to cut deals that benefit his cronies. He made his son a major defense contractor. He ignored court orders. He disobeyed laws, even ones like the Epstein Transparency Act that he signed. So yes, he should be impeached, convicted, and removed from office. The question isn't whether Democrats should do this. The question is, why won't Republicans? Why won't Republicans? It's not like they don't see the same things we do. They do. In fact, you can hear them plead with Trump. Please, sir, could you be a little more discreet with your imperial overreach so we can at least pretend it's legit? Please, sir, can you at least not publicize your crimes on social media? That's what you hear from the Republicans. They see what's happening. And that's partly why the accidental Speaker of the House, that mouse, Mike Johnson, sent the legislative body away for most of the end of last year. Never mind they have budgets to pass. Johnson needs his Republicans in the witness protection program, lest an actual voter see one and subject the member to a moment of reckoning with the truth. Why won't today's Republicans do what Republicans did when Nixon broke the law? Why won't they do what Democrats in Illinois did when a Democratic government, Rod Blagojevich, was corrupt? Why won't they remove him from office? Republicans used to put their country first. Democrats do. Why won't these guys do it? It's a fair question. Could it be that they like what his governing has given to Americans? I doubt it. I don't know how anybody can like that. In fact, they don't pretend to like it. They've run away from it. After all, Trump, the economy he inherited, the one the economists called the envy of the world, it's stalled on his watch. Job growth, nearly gone. Inflation, which was coming down, has gone back up. Troops are shooting Americans in our cities. Measles outbreaks, once a thing of the past, are roaring back. Our strongest allies are daily threatened by a president who thinks he's an emperor. Now, Republicans don't like this, but they still stand by the author of all these ills. Why? Why? Well, I'm afraid the answer is pretty simple. Today's Republican Party is determined to put party over country, to hold power no matter the cost to their constituents, to our country, and to our ideals. They have elevated the symbols of their party as if they were symbols of our nation, proudly bringing MAGA hats into the Oval Office and hanging giant portraits of Donald Trump from government buildings. This is the stuff you see in Riyadh, where the image of King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman are everywhere. Monarchical stuff. Today's Republicans celebrate as a historic martyr Ashley Babbitt, who was shot trying to break into the House chamber to disrupt and stop the certification of the lawful vote for president on January 6th. And yet they slander Renee Good, who was shot sitting in her car bearing witness to an ICE raid. This is who the Republicans are. Republicans, they're now demanding to engage in mid-decade redistricting. And they're trying to change the election rules, and they're attempting to have the federal government seize state voter files. This represents a clear threat to the integrity of our democracy. And Republicans are complicit because the only thing that matters to them is staying in power. They're no different. This Republican Party, today's Republican Party, this isn't the old Republican Party. Donald Trump would have been impeached by Republicans 10 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago. They didn't, but they would have if they'd seen this. They're all in. They're no different than the Chinese Communist Party. We are going to rule no matter what. or Putin's United Russia Party. They're no different than Mussolini's fascists or Hitler's Nazis. The party comes first, not the people, not the nation, not democracy, not allies, not honor, not the rule of law, not anything. Certainly not the America we love. And this week, Donald Trump said there are no guardrails, no checks on his power whatsoever. He told reporters the only thing that can stop him is his own moral compass. That's an absolute monarch's claim, and the Republicans are all in. The highest crimes, the steady stream of misdemeanors. Should this monster be impeached and removed from power? The founders would have done it. Republicans a decade ago, as I said, would have done it. Democrats will still do it. But today's GOP, nope. Since Trump came down that infamous escalator, Republicans have missed every opportunity to get off this highway to fascism. And they've ridden it all the way there. Today's Republican Party is a fascist party and a corrupt one. Probably a criminal one. Certainly, they are allowing criminal activities. They will protect Trump to hold on to power no matter the cost to American people, no matter how many mothers like Renee Good they have to slander after they kill. My God, we must be rid of them all. Anyway, I have a great show for you today. It's not all as angry as I am, for sure. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what these terrible people have done to American healthcare. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me through that, bit of a rant at the beginning, but I mean every word of it. Anyway, let's turn to something equally cheery. I actually have a fabulous guest, Elizabeth Jacobs. She's been here before. She is epidemiologist and a professor emeritus at the University of Arizona. She's a founding member, really the energy behind Defend Public Health. We last talked, I want to say September. It was right when Bobby Kennedy had fired the director of the CDC. Elizabeth, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you so much for having me again, Edwin.
So I want to talk about vaccines. I want to talk about the new food guidelines. I want to talk about resurgent measles. And we can start wherever you want.
Okay, well, we could actually start with a news story that just came out from South Carolina, where they have just reported 99 new measles cases over the past 3 days. And so this is a very serious issue we are facing. At the same time, the Pan American Health Organization is looking at the United States to consider whether we will keep our measles elimination status or not. And RFK Jr. is up to his old antics now, where he actually wants to try to build a case for why the United States should not lose its measles elimination status. And to do that, they're sort of tweaking a technicality about continued transmission of measles in the United States. So it's another example of his interest in optics only and not in the reality. He's doing nothing to stop this measles outbreak, but yet he also doesn't want to lose our elimination status.
What does it mean to lose our elimination status? Are there any consequences for that? Does it affect global travel? I mean, what does it mean?
What it basically is an indication of the health of a country. It's a metric that we use to provide information to the public about, whether a country's health system is functioning properly or not. So there usually aren't any type of, tangible consequences to that other than acknowledging and making public that we have completely screwed up.
So this technicality you're talking about, they want to say the measles outbreak in, say, California isn't the same one as in Texas. It's something completely different. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so
Yeah,
this argument is hinging on Utah, actually. And that's interesting because in October, there was a news story out in a number of outlets that explained that the very first case in Utah refused to speak to the health department. So,
right.
in fact, we don't know where that person contracted measles, and they're trying to use that to say, oh, it probably wasn't continuous transmission.
Well,
And
I mean,
yeah,
so what? Look, they may be able to pull that off in this case, but South Carolina is going to be North Carolina and Ohio before you know it.
correct, correct.
And I mean, the, the country is sicker because of these people.
Yes,
Are there
clearly.
any other infectious diseases that are rearing their head because of them?
Sure. Whooping cough. We've
Mm,
had a really bad year for whooping cough as well, and it is a cyclical disease. So there are years where we will see a really huge number of cases, and then years where there's just less, and it kind of follows this natural cycle. But again, taken together, there is no question that vaccination coverage is falling in the United States, and clearly, these outbreaks are due to falling vaccination rates.
yeah, crazy, right? Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and now we've cut the vaccine schedule for children in the country. And he said, wait, I wrote this down. We're aligning the U.S. childhood vaccine schedule with international consensus while strengthening transparency and informed consent. Really?
This is nonsense. We are actually now going to be lagging behind a number of European countries. They really like to compare us to Denmark, and that's another longer story. But if you actually look at the vaccination recommendations across Europe, we are now lagging behind them, first of all. And second of all, the vaccines that are no longer recommended, these are hepatitis A, hepatitis B, rotavirus, meningococcal disease, flu, and COVID. These particular vaccines have prevented nearly 2 million hospitalizations and more than 90,000 deaths since they were released. So, to say that this has any basis in science is absolutely ridiculous. And in fact, they couldn't. So that's why they're using this ridiculous, justification that we're now in line with Europe. It's kind of funny that the Trump administration is against globalism and all of that until it comes to this particular issue.
Wait a minute. They're saying we should be like Denmark, a nation that we are also saying we think is irresponsible and we're going to take Greenland from them. So
Exactly.
we're taking Greenland and their vaccination schedule.
Yes, exactly. But not their nationalized health care, of course.
Not their
That's
nationalized health care,
right.
and not their. I mean, they they have all kinds of reasons why that a vaccination schedule that's appropriate for Denmark isn't appropriate for the U.S. I mean, the size of the country, the lack of diversity of the country, the national health care of the country, the overall better health practices in that country. There are all kinds of reasons why they don't create the I don't know what you call them, the disease reservoirs that we create.
That's right. That's completely right. And discussing Greenland briefly, I wanted to say that Greenland separated its public health system from Denmark in the early 1990s because Denmark was, without uh, women's consent, actually uh, sterilizing and uh, against women's knowledge, providing contraception. They were actually inserting IUDs into women without telling them that. So
Really?
Greenland, yes,
Ugh.
Greenland said, "We are out. We are out. We're not going to work." And so they're, interestingly, their health system is separate from Denmark's.
All right. So we are going to, the hospitalization numbers that you say these vaccines have prevented. What was that number again? Was it very big?
2 million hospitalizations and 90,000 deaths.
Yeah, just take the hospitalizations for a second. 2 million hospitalizations is an enormous expense. Leaving aside what it feels like to be so sick you have to be in the hospital, for the country, it's enormously costly.
It absolutely is. And there's also, as you sort of mentioned there, some serious trauma associated with being hospitalized, especially for children. It's really quite scary.
Mm-hmm.
And that can live with kids for a really long time. They can have medical trauma that sticks with them. It could be something as quote unquote minor as being terrified of shots, or it could be much more serious. So, yeah, this is not trivial. The other piece to this is, and this is more related to measles, but if your child is unvaccinated and there is an outbreak in your area, the local public health department has the authority to order you to quarantine or isolate. And so that means for parents, missed work to stay home with the child, and it could be up to 3 weeks per go around. So a lot of people, we should focus on health and first and foremost, but a lot of people don't fully understand that the vaccination program also helps keep our country running.
I'm afraid, Elizabeth, that a quarantine program could no longer be implemented in America. I think if public health told people in, some states that, hey, look, for the good of everybody, and it's the law, you're infected with a highly infectious disease, you have to quarantine, they would say, it's my free right to go wherever I want in this country, and you can't tell me not to, and they'll go infect everybody.
Well, sure, and some of them are. In South Carolina, they have had a little bit of pushback, but they also do have, I think, 200 people in either quarantine or isolation right now. But that said, you're exactly right. We saw this with COVID-19 where individuals, I don't want to get vaccinated. So we would say, well, could you wear a mask? No, I don't want to do that either. Do you want to stay home? No, I don't want to do that either. And, to circle back.
It's just so selfish.
Yeah.
It's so selfish.
We've lost this sense of community that we used to have, this dedication to our neighbors to help them be healthy and to keep ourselves healthy. We've just lost that. And in fact, RFK Jr. just this morning released a video on Twitter where he's railing against Germany for prosecuting doctors that violated public health law during the pandemic. And RFK Jr. actually says doctors are acting for the collective. And that's and he's angry about it. That's what public health is. It's acting for the collective.
Well, so let me push back, go back, and then I'll get there. But I want to back up a little bit. I do not believe we have lost this. I think there is a partisan minority in America that has lost it and does not care about each other or the country for some crazy partisan reason. But as we're seeing all over the country, we saw it in Chicago, heaven knows we're seeing it in Minneapolis, people are coming out of their houses in order to protect their neighbors because we care about our neighbors. When you look at what, and now I'm talking about in response to the ICE raids, but I think this instinct that we are one community and we should look out for each other has not been lost, no matter what the right wing in America tells us, for whatever reason, sick reasons they have of their own to do it.
Well, that's absolutely a very fair point, Edwin, and you're absolutely right. I will rescind my comment that we've lost it. I will amend it and say that our leadership has lost it.
Yes.
or they never had it to begin with.
Right, and they profit somehow, both politically and sometimes economically, by dividing us and by selling the clicks that go with these conspiracy theories.
Certainly. They certainly do.
Yeah. It's just hideous. And anyway, your second point about Bobby Kennedy going after the German government for saying we need to take care of our whole people. This is in line, of course, with the entire administration's effort to support AfD, the fascist party in Germany, and to claim that anything that looks out after the public good is communist, and that's why we need the fascists back. That's why they say, well, free speech for, I guess, every fascist in Europe, where we've aligned with the fascist. This administration in our country is aligned with fascist parties in Europe, and Kennedy's outburst this morning, Kennedy's outbreak is what I think about everywhere else, is in line with that.
Absolutely. And it really is all tied together where there's this, eugenicist mindset where it's every person for themselves. And he had a comment the other day where he kind of slipped up and said something like only sick children should die of measles, for example. So this belief that you have some kind of innate strength, if you will, that's going to protect you from viruses is absolutely ridiculous. And at the same time, people with resources, with wealth and privilege will be able to continue to get vaccines if they want. It's, again, the vulnerable people of the United States that are going to be harmed by this the most at first. Eventually, if this is allowed to continue, it's going to take all of us down.
Yeah. All right. Well, either that or heart disease. So let's move and talk about like the food guidelines. I was just thrilled to know that I should just be eating cheeseburgers again all day long. I haven't done that since I was a young man.
Right on. That sounds really good. No sugar though. Yeah. So we can't have pie, but yeah. So. The whole thing is so childish that they released this pyramid and they're like, well, we flipped the food guide pyramid upside down. First of all, the food guide pyramid was sort of retired in 2005, really. And we developed some other guidance after that, but he's sort of, tilting at windmills again and fighting something that really doesn't exist. The scientific report that came out last year about this time was really quite similar to guidance that we've had in the past, where you want to keep your saturated fat at less than 10% of your diet. But then Kennedy, says, well, you should be eating more red meat and butter and beef tallow. So these recommendations are clearly contradictory just on their face.
But like, why is he doing it? I mean, I don't know there's no reason to get in his head, but in order to do it, he had to get rid of a bunch of scientists.
Sure. Yes, he did. And of course, he has this report at his fingertips too from scientists, which he's simply chosen to ignore. So why is he doing it? That's the burning question. I can't answer that. He can profit from undermining vaccines, and I guess he can profit from this in some ways as well. But it's just continuing to back up this overall mindset that you can do whatever you want, and you shouldn't listen to experts because, they're trying to control you or whatever.
Okay, well, great. He is leading the what's supposed to be the government agency of experts. So, I mean, he might as well just leave and shut the door behind him. We won't be any worse off. You have your organization, which I like, Defend Public Health, has this fabulous website, and on it you have what you call like the Whopper of the Week, and some of it is just so much fun. And if you're listening, everybody, you should go on Defend Public Health's website and look at these. Like, for example, one that I pulled the other day, because I didn't even know this was a thing. They're claiming that antidepressants are the cause for mass shootings.
Yes.
That's right. That's crazy.
It is. And it just goes back to not understanding the basic principles of how a study is done. People who are depressed are the people who are on antidepressants. And they often, or not, I wouldn't even want to say often, sometimes when somebody is gripped by depression, that can manifest itself in
Terrible
violence
ways. Yeah.
against themselves or against somebody else. But to go back and say it's because of the antidepressants is completely contra to how you would do a scientific analysis. So it's a confounding factor that they don't care about, and this just goes back to Kennedy's overall desire to have a simple explanation for every complicated reality. So if he can blame antidepressants, then he doesn't have to address the very severe mental health challenges that we have in this country.
I mean, his view about medicine is don't take it. This
Yeah.
about vaccines is don't take it. His view about guidance about what you should eat and not eat is don't pay attention. I mean, I think he just like live happy, do whatever you want, and if you die a couple of years earlier, nah, you know what? You've been happy, right? That's not good counsel.
No, it's not. And he also ignores the fact that he himself is still alive because of his wealth and privilege. He's not communicating from a position that even applies to the vast majority of Americans. And he doesn't seem to see it. And that does seem to be completely contrary to what his father seemed to believe and understand, that there are people in the United States who are marginalized and not seen, and that we need to do our best to create policies to elevate everybody. His son has turned into the exact opposite of that type of philosophy.
Yeah, no, Bobby. This Bobby is really dangerous for the country.
He
Dangerous
is.
for the country.
He is.
And
Yeah.
he also, I mean, he also lied to Congress, but I guess that is a requirement if you want to serve in this administration.
It certainly is, and that brings us to Bill Cassidy.
Yeah, I
If we
want
want
to
to
talk
talk
about
about
him.
him
I
for a
do.
second.
Absolutely. You right there on my list. Yep.
So yeah, Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, he's an MD, and he likes to brag about how he ran vaccination campaigns for underprivileged kids, but he has completely abandoned his duty to as a doctor. He writes these tweets about how angry he is about what RFK Jr. is doing. The man is a US senator. None of us has the power to do what Cassidy could do, which would be to convince the House to impeach Kennedy and then to convince his colleagues to convict him and get rid of him, because Cassidy is up for election. And so he is trying to get that sweet MAGA vote. So he won't do a darn thing
So
to stop Kennedy.
yeah, I mean, before you came on, I spoke a little bit about today's Republican Party, Elizabeth, and I just think they are a criminal fascist party. They want to hold power at all costs for their party, and that matters to them more than our health, more than our democracy, more than our laws. And this man that you're talking about is a great example, right? He knows better. He's an MD. He knows about vaccines. He said so in a hearing, but he won't do a thing about it. He would rather let everyone get sick than risk anything for the country.
That's absolutely true. And I completely agree with you about the state of the current Republican Party. And we can, of course, see that with these ICE raids and these detentions, including of American citizens that have been happening. And of course, the
Detentions and murder of American citizens.
the murder of not just Renee Good, but other individuals, people of color who've been murdered. And, these things that we're seeing also have public health impact, because it's causing terror, trauma amongst all of us. And that's the goal, of course.
Let me ask you about the medical profession. Um, um, it's, as far as I know, the doctors have not, as a group, really been into politics. I mean, the AMA does some lobbying, but by and large, doctors have steered away from like, leave the politics to the politicians, but now politics, in the form of MAGA conspiracies turned government policies, is undermining the core of the medical profession, which is like evidence-based medicine, right?
That's right.
And still, they're largely on the sidelines. Like, what's it going to take for doctors en masse to say, you know what, we're closing the hospital. That we will take we're gonna go on a general strike until this government cares about its people.
So I think about this problem a lot, Edwin. And so, doctors or healthcare professionals are a really diverse group of people. But I would say that most of them are in this role because they are the types of people who absolutely could not tolerate walking out because they know that people would die, right? And so Trump, the regime also knows this. So I just think that doctors would really struggle, nurses, to leave patients to walk out. So I don't know how you
maybe
do
something
that.
less dramatic they could do.
Yeah. But to your point about doctors and scientists, I can just speak to my own training where, learning, going through graduate school, we were in no uncertain terms by our employers, universities, told that we cannot speak about political issues in public. That is a fundamental part of training, at least when I was coming up. I don't know if that's changing now, but it's really hard to get past that. I've been in meetings with some people who have been fired from the CDC and other organizations, and they say, it's really hard for me to start doing advocacy because it's contrary to how I've had to operate for the past decades. And I said, absolutely, me too. When I retired, well, first during the pandemic, I would say I became radicalized. If, to be radical leftist scum, I guess. But it became clear to me that my own silence was complicity. And I think we need to reach a stage where people in my field and medicine really start to understand that.
I agree, and I don't know how to get them there. I mean, we have the attack on vaccines, we have the attack on nutrition, we have the dismantling of what we do for public health in the country, and we've also had an attack on nursing as a profession, in the sense that this government will not now help pay for student loans for nurses the way they do for other professions. Because they think it's a profession for women, and so they want women not to be in professions. I don't know, but all of this impacts the health of individuals and the public health and the public and the national economy and our productivity and our status in the world. I mean, all of it. And the folks in that profession. Their voices are missing, and it's a sadness for me.
It is, and you know what? They also did that to public health degrees. The same thing they did to nursing degrees.
Same thing with public health degrees. Yep.
I mean, to your point, if we look at public health, or if we just look at the vaccination program in the U.S. and we imagine it as a house, there are some load-bearing walls, and one of those load-bearing walls is exactly what you just said. We need nursing, healthcare professionals, and public health personnel. We also need research to be funded. We need the government to provide accurate information, and we need CDC vaccine recommendations. So those are load-bearing walls. And so while we might not see an immediate effect of these attacks, all of those load-bearing walls are being subjected to cannon shots from RFK Jr. and the Trump regime, including from Trump himself, who's wandered into the medical field, I guess, with his, don't take Tylenol.
Yeah, right.
And separate out the MMR. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, honestly, just shut up. Like he knows nothing about this area. So anyway, the house will collapse. If he keeps it up, the house is going to collapse. And I think that's what RFK Jr. ultimately wants to see happen.
Sickening. All right, I wanted to spend time with you on this today, but now I have to ask this question: how does America pay attention to this when the rest of the news every day is, I don't know, we are murdering people on boats when they're clinging to the side of the boats,
right.
And the U.S. government is doing that, or they're shooting Americans on the streets, or they are or they are taking people off the streets and they're dying in ICE custody, God knows where, or we're invading a foreign country, or we're threatening to blow up NATO by taking land from one of our NATO allies. How is it in that environment Americans are supposed to pay attention to public health?
Well, that's very, very hard. And when Trump was first elected, I think I posted something about how each of us is going to be quickly overwhelmed if we don't identify our lane and then sort of stick to it. And because it is overwhelming. And so while I sometimes will be, posting or doing advocacy in areas around ICE, for example, mostly I try to focus on my area of expertise, which is public health. And so I think it's important for everybody to decide which of these things they are going to work on attacking and make that their main focus. Otherwise, it is just too overwhelming. And, I literally have to walk away from the news for days just to sort of recover if I don't maintain my focus. So I don't think that all of us can do all of those things. I don't even know if any of us can do all of those things. So I think if we all focus on one piece, there's enough of us to elicit change.
I guess let me ask that question a different way. If we are all focused on different pieces, will we have the power that to force change, or should we decide collectively, this opposition, that there are 3 or 4 pieces we should all focus on and get more wood behind a few arrowheads?
So I think either of those things is viable. My thinking is just all of us pulling at our edge of the problem is leading us directly back to the same thing, which is that Republicans all need to be voted out of office, period. So whether you're coming at it from murders by federal agents, from the destruction of public health, or whatever, we're all going to end up in the same place, which is we have got to get rid of Republican leadership. It is a failure. Republicans cannot govern.
They can govern. They just can't govern well. They're definitely governing.
This is true.
Yeah. I think, are you in Arizona?
Yes.
So you are about to export one of yours to the middle of the country. Carrie Lake is thinking that she is going to run for Senate in the lovely farm state of Iowa. Do you have any wisdom or any warning for the good people of Iowa?
Oh, my friends in Iowa. Actually, one of my best friends is in Iowa. So, I think Carrie Lake is a vacuous, useless fool, and she is power mad, ambition mad. She is not sincere in anything that she says. And just to let Iowans know, you've got to get out after her immediately. Mark Kelly, thank goodness, was able to defeat her, but she came pretty close. And so I would tell you as well that Carrie Lake is actually worse than Donald Trump. So if you want to give up your current awful governor and replace her with Carrie Lake, whatever you're experiencing now is going to get 1,000 times worse.
Yeah, I heard she was thinking of running for Senate, not governor, but either way.
Sorry, Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you for that warning. I appreciate it. I mean, you're where you live has been the site of some of the real battlegrounds in this fight. Election denial work, fighting to keep elections. I mean, and the whole country sort of saw it there.
Yeah, TPUSA is headquartered here. Steve Bannon has a house here. There's definitely a very vibrant MAGA group that's active in Arizona. And the other piece is that we're starting to hear that ICE is going to make Arizona its next target. So you had mentioned, how we can focus on different things. And one of the things that I will be focusing on is being out in the streets if ICE is here, documenting what they are doing. Mm-hmm. So we are a purple state, but we have definitely enclaves where there are certain political entrenched systems. And where I live in Tucson, we are certainly not, as a rule, welcoming of ICE or of kidnapping our neighbors. So I'm sort of holding my breath and just getting ready for what I'm going to need to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a through line in this, and this goes back to the conversation we had earlier, the public part of public health. There is like, okay, I can take care of myself, but there are things that we do to make us all healthier. And we've been talking about vaccines and the CDC's work when there's an outbreak, and research and the hospital medical infrastructure to support care. But I suppose we should also talk about water systems and sewer systems, which were some of the most powerful public health improvements in the history of mankind. These are things we do together because we care about each other, because a rich guy can make a well and have a septic field wherever he wants. But we did these things so that we could all be healthier, so that cholera epidemics stopped happening. And, and this extends past physical health into societal health when you start looking out for your neighbors when some fascist thugs come in and start pointing their guns at citizens and saying, we're going to take somebody out of a daycare center because we can.
Absolutely. And if I could take the water thing for a second and run with that, it ties back into these nutritional guidelines that were released, because if you notice that at the top of the weird upside down pyramid, you see red meat and dairy. And these are two struggling industries in the United States right now. So how does this circle back to water? Because dairy is not environmentally sustainable. And so Chris Mays, our Attorney General in Arizona, has just forced a dairy farms to pay the state for them taking more water out of the groundwater than they were ever said that they were going to, and that they promised not to. So all of this just circles back into public health, into community care. Of course, Doug Ducey, our former Republican governor, had struck a deal with Saudi Arabia to they could grow alfalfa in Arizona and again use up a lot of the water. And then they'd ship it all the way back to Saudi Arabia to feed their cattle. And that's just unbelievable to me. So
really yes. Globally responsible behavior. Just buy the cattle from Montana and call it a day. You can ship the meat to Saudi.
Right. And I mean, the costs involved in that, and shipping alfalfa all the way to Saudi Arabia, tells you how much of a smoking deal Ducey must have given them to use our water. Yeah, because otherwise that's just not possible.
I mean, this is way off topic, but the Saudis have have a real food security issue. They live in a place that doesn't have enough water for the population they have, and they constantly worry about, do we, what's our food security strategy? How are we going to know we have a food supply at all times? But then that is a question we all have to ask ourselves, because in our country, our food strategy is a global one. And these tariffs have, I was at the grocery store this morning. Oh man, these tariffs have interrupted the global food supply, and food prices are way up.
Yes.
Way
Yes,
up.
they are. And I mean, again, it kind of circles back. I wrote an op-ed that actually wasn't published around this time last year, where I was sort of sending up a warning flare that our food safety and security was going to take a hit. I am by far not the only person who was on to this topic at that time. But yeah, we could see very early on that the combination of deportations, and then, of course, now abuse, murder, and kidnap of Hispanic individuals, combined with firing federal workers, mass firings, was going to result in slippage and erosion of our food safety program, which we are now seeing. And of course, food supply limitations, and then combine that with the cuts to SNAP and other food assistance programs. The funding to food banks was cut. It really gives you a hideous picture of what we are facing going into 2026 at the start of the
Yeah,
year,
look, Elizabeth, I so appreciate I know your expertise is public health and the absolute disaster that RFK has been for America and for the health of America. And I really appreciate your going on this walk with me where we connect that to the bigger picture of the attack on America's health and safety and security and prosperity more broadly.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, because yes, it's all of these things just point back to one thing. We have got to vote Republicans out of office. We have to.
Well, we're going to try, and we're going to, and Americans are getting organized. I mean, I'm very proud of what I've seen Americans do. It's very hard when you're faced with the biggest propaganda machine in history, spouting lies every moment of every day, when the traditional media that you've trusted gets bought by friends of the guy in charge, and like CBS News now lies. It's very, very hard for people to, take the time to figure out what's right and then to act. But Americans in increasing numbers have made up their mind that this administration and its supporters are bad for the country.
Absolutely. And I have to say that if I could pick one problem out of everything towards facing our democracy, you've exactly just said it. It's disinformation. It's rampant. It's propaganda. It's coming from the US government. We live in different information environments, and I don't know how we get past that.
Well, let's get past the next election first.
Yes.
And then we'll at least have a chance. Hey, I really appreciate your spending time with me, and tell people how they can find your work.
Sure. Thanks for having me again. And Defend Public Health is pretty easy to find. We're just www.defendpublichealth.org. And I really appreciate you mentioning the Whopper of the Week, Edwin, because that's a great team that puts that up. We actually, our biggest challenge with that is usually to choose which of the insane things RFK Jr. has done on any given week to talk about. So I hope people can come to our website and maybe join some of our state organizing teams that we have going now.
Talk about those for 1 second. We have a couple minutes. That would be actually really interesting.
Sure. So John Schaefer of Defend Public Health has started an initiative to begin state-based organizing, and we did get a little bit of funding to do this. I should say, a generous amount of funding to do this from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And so we now have about 13 state teams that are really looking at the public health issues facing their state, because public health is more local than I think a lot of people may be aware. And so the idea is people are monitoring their states, and they're going to start preparing policy platforms and actions that can be taken at the state level. And we do have a number of these teams going now, but if anybody wants to get in contact, please go to the website. I will actually be the person who gets your email if you contact us, and I will put you in touch with whoever you need to be in touch with in order to join one of our state groups.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I really, really appreciate that. Good luck out there, and keep up the great work.
Thank you for your work too, Edwin. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a break for the news, if you can believe it. If you could believe the news, that's funny. And afterwards, the great Jill Lawrence is joining me.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Jill Lawrence, author, editor, opinion writer at The Bulwark and for many other news organizations, and a longtime friend of this show, is back, and it's been too long. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Edwin.
How are you?
I'm great, and it's great to be here
Hey,
under the circumstances.
but yeah, before we get into the charms of the Trump administration, could you just give everybody and me an update on the cookbook project?
Well, funny you should ask. The DC Voting Rights Cookbook with Recipes and Justice for All has an agent who's about to send it around to publishers, and we hope to have news in the next month or maybe two. It's pretty much done. We have many, many contributors from all over the country, and some of them have already changed careers in the time that it's taken us to write this book, but that's okay. One of them is running for office now in Ohio. So we'll just see what happens. A lot of these people are very invested in the idea of DC getting voting representation in Congress, which it does not have and has really never had in the past 250 years. So it's classic taxation without representation. And everyone's getting a taste right now of what that means because of what Donald Trump is able to do to us that he can't really do anywhere else. He can send ICE anywhere he wants, obviously, and that's what he's doing. But he can't send the National Guard anywhere except to D.C. And, he can't override any governor, but he is the commander of the D.C. National Guard. And thus, that's why you saw that he sent these troops to our streets, and they're still here months and months and months later. So that's, I
hear, though, he's made it absolutely crime-free. It's the safest place in the world, and it's all because of him.
It was, there was a tremendous decline in crime before he showed up. And to tell you the truth, given what's going on in the rest of the country, having troops with arms in the streets anywhere doesn't seem like the greatest idea.
No. And he is a one-man crime spree anyway. So.
Well, that's true.
Yep.
And he was last time too. So it's kind of amazing we did this again.
So in the break, before you came on, we run news. And the news said, and it was a quote from Donald Trump. There he was saying, we're going to take Greenland either by a deal or we'll take it the hard way. Because if we don't, Russia or China will, and we can't have them as a neighbor. I have so much to say about that, but I'd love your take on it.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing you did. There are so many things wrong with what he said, which I actually heard. But I also saw a New York Times headline that Europe and Denmark and Greenland are thinking negotiation is their best bet. And I'm thinking, no, don't negotiate. I mean, first of all, Denmark is part of NATO. Greenland is part of NATO. We have a presence there, a military presence. And, we should be
Right. If
taking
Russia
advantage of
tries
them.
to
We
take
should
it,
be
we have to defend them. We have to repel Russia if they try and take it. That's what our NATO contract says.
right. And we should be negotiating with them to just have a bigger presence if that's what we want. But I don't understand why he thinks that all of Europe and America wouldn't repel Russia or China. It's an excuse like everything, it's not grounded in realities or alliances or anything else.
Yes, the right wing has told us about a different part of the world. Well, we needed to do this because Hezbollah was going to take over America from Venezuela. Yeah, really? Seriously? And yet you hear it all the time on the right. Oh, these terrorists were operating in Venezuela. When did a Venezuelan come and attack us?
Well, we're talking war for oil, right? And oil that the oil companies don't even want. Oil that's not easy to purify and use, oil that doesn't belong to us, oil from a state that's going to be a country that's going to be in a kind of a unstable state, given that what Trump has done and what's been going on there. It's not a place where you're going to find an environment for a good economy. So I feel like it's.
Let's stay with Venezuela for a second, Jill. Marco Rubio said to the world, look, there's no war. We didn't have a war in Venezuela. This was a police action. The military were just there to make sure that good people from the FBI could exercise a warrant to get somebody we wanted on drug offenses, right? But we're running a full-on blockade of the country. That is an act of war by every definition, isn't it?
Well, they're seizing tankers that they think are violating, the embargo, and you can't just go into countries where you've arrested a leader. And here we are, we're not even members of the International Criminal Court. We just go in and take who we think we need because, with the fig leaf of an arrest and the real motive of profit and greed and getting more oil, which we don't need.
Well, apparently this was special oil, Jill, because this oil, remember, that was going to be taken, and Donald Trump personally was going to make sure to see who gets the proceeds. So this was going to be his oil. This isn't like the oil companies. This was his oil we were going to go to war for. He gets to say where the profits go.
Yeah. Well, that's his whole presidency in a nutshell. You've said it. He dictates who wins and who loses. The whole idea of not picking winners and losers was kind of a classic American cliche for economic leadership. And the market will choose those winners and losers, and we did pretty good under that system. But now it's Team Trump, cronies, allies, people who want pardons from him, whatever, he gets the money, he distributes the money, makes the threats. It's so overwhelming that I really hope people are keeping track. And then when I realize some people are keeping track, it's like, here are the 500 worst abuses that Trump committed in 2025. And here is, 100 instances in that of part 3 of 4. I mean, it's just like you want to go crazy, right?
But I don't think we should get too lost in the details anymore. I think it's a pointillist painting, and each of these is a dot. But the picture is clear. It's absolutely clear. We have the most corrupt, the most dangerous, the most anti-American
government administration.
I don't even know what it is.
cabal.
Yeah, I mean, occupation of the White House, like in the same sense a foreign government would occupy the White House. If a foreign entity, if Vladimir Putin could have installed a president in the United States, what he would do is indistinguishable from what Donald Trump has done. He would make us less healthy, less prosperous, more at each other's throats, a pariah in the world. I mean, like what else? What possibly else could he do? And maybe even not a democracy. Oh yes, and by the way, side with the fascist parties in Europe against the democratically elected governments there, right? So that's who this government is.
Right. I mean, I think one way to avoid the pointillist trap, I guess you might call it, although it really is good to know all the details, but maybe not right now when we're so overwhelmed. But I've written something that I hope is going to come out in the next couple of days about impeachment articles against Trump, but also against many members of his cabinet. And it's interesting because they kind of specify what's going on in terms that are very general for the counts, and then with some details that give you categories, of why this is a high crime or misdemeanor.
I'm anxious to see that, Jill.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a really good guide to what we should be paying attention to, even though I know a lot of people have been very dismissive. I think that's waning now, especially about Kristi Noem. But it's well, anyway, we'll wait till that comes out. But anyway, that's it's surprisingly interesting. And while the people who've introduced these things have not been beloved by their colleagues, it's interesting reading that really captures what's happening in a digestible way, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've thought about this. Like, if I could impeach one of them, I'm not sure who it would be. I am sure who it would be. I am.
Okay, I have my pick too. Who would yours be?
Pam Bondi, because the rule of law. If you had a working Justice Department, then the criminality, even of Kristi Noem, would have a check.
Well, I mean, that's a completely valid and meaningful choice, Edwin. Not the same as mine.
Let me hear yours.
Kennedy,
oh,
because he's already killing people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices.
A lot of choices. It's the only government, it's the only administration in my lifetime, Democrat or Republican, where there is no one to admire, no one to say to a young person, this is somebody to admire. This is somebody who's no, zero. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Howard Lutnick, how fast can I line my own pocket? I mean, unbelievable.
I mean, even the people who've kind of kept a low profile have been very disappointing. I'm thinking of Doug Burgum. Doug Burgum, whose state runs on wind power, who has, gleefully ended all the wind projects that Trump once ended.
Yep.
I mean, I've called this the dark age presidency because it seems like that's where he's taking us back to. Trump, I mean, not Doug Burgum alone.
Yeah. You talk to people in that city of yours. What do people in the United States Senate really think about the use of paramilitary troops in American cities?
You mean Democrats, Republicans? I mean, in DC, the residents are out of their minds. I actually had a New Year's Day party at my house with 22 people who have been involved in politics and journalism and law, and have worked on Capitol Hill and have worked as consultants and all this kind of thing. The evening ended with an hour-long argument over politics, and it was kind of a question of how far do we go? How long do we wait? What can be done immediately? And of course, who should Democrats run in 2028? So, I mean, there's a lot of preoccupation, and I would say that the coping mechanism is looking to the future, but, that's not going to help what's going on in the present, and a lot of it is affecting people very badly.
I mean, I don't There isn't a place in the country where these people are welcome. I mean, Chicago ran them out. We did. We organized, and I am so proud of my city. They'll come back, and they'll come back bigger and more. But I'm very proud of what we did. And then I was part of. And many people were part of sharing what we learned with Minneapolis and with New Orleans and with Charlotte and other places. And everywhere they go, they're hated. Everywhere they go, they're hated, and Americans don't like it. So do the people in the Senate think, oh, it's a great idea? Any of them?
I don't think so, but I don't think anyone's going to have the courage to. I mean, look at what happens to the blue states versus red states. You know, they're not being. Not only are they not being targeted, the governors are saying yes when Trump asked to send other states National Guards to D.C. I'm not sure if there's so much legal activity on this front. I'm not sure if they're still allowed to go to other places.
They're not. But none of us here will ever forgive Greg Abbott for gleefully sending his young men and women to go. They never got to our streets because the courts wouldn't allow them, but he was happy to send them, and they came up here and wasted a month of their lives away from their families, away from their businesses, sitting in a base outside of Chicago.
Well, I mean, and then you have the young woman. Was she from Utah? There was a young National Guards person from another state who was killed by a person who was unbalanced by his own military service to us.
Yep.
So, you know, it's a terrible idea. It's the kind of thing that happens, just like what happened in Minneapolis with Renee Good, when you have armed people all over the place, and you know, this is just asking for it. It really is. You have no idea how these people are trained or what their mental state is. It's very dangerous.
But Jill, I think it's dangerous by design. I think they do not care if they kill Americans. They then say, oh, well, those are the bad Americans we're killing. Those are they don't care if their activities piss off 80% of America. They do. And more every day. But they are radicalizing a base. They are absolutely radicalizing a base that thinks we have an enemy at home, we have an enemy overseas, we have an enemy everywhere, and anything we do to them is okay.
Beginning to think that there may be the beginning of an awakening among some of these red state senators. Or even purple state senators who are Republicans, and you know, there's some defiance. There's some defiance going on, right? Mm-hmm. On some of the issues that affect their constituents, and I just can't get away from the idea that the last week was a watershed week. In you know, we had the Venezuela. Not invasion. What happened in Minneapolis, the killing of Renee Good. We had, you know, the vote on the Affordable Care Act subsidies that won some Republican support that surprised Trump, and he went after them. But
continued Jeffrey Epstein non-compliance, and Americans aren't. You know, no matter how hard he distracts, Americans are like, wait a minute. You know,
right.
I mean, you signed that law. You personally signed it, said release it. So what's going on?
I mean, there was an interesting comment from somebody on social media after Trump said that he was going to cap credit card rates. And people are like, how and what and you know, all these other things that he says he does, and someone's comment was that under what power, well, under what authority? It's the no one will make me stop authority. Nobody stops me authority. And so, you know, this is what has to happen to make him stop. And he did get stopped by a court order last night
He did.
By just in terms of blocking some social program money for five.
A lot of it.
From five
My state
states.
was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But Jill, I mean, it's hard to stop him when it is an act of the government. When he orders the people in the executive branch to do something, it can get stopped by Congress, but Congress is AWOL. It can get stopped, it can certainly be slowed by the courts, but the courts are slow, right? Or it can be stopped by the people, as we sort of did with ICE here. But when he says, who can stop me from forcing the credit card companies to cap fees? Well, that's not, that's a different question. He doesn't have that power. He can't order it to be done in the same way. He can try and coerce the companies, as he's done in the news media, or with universities or law firms, but they're less vulnerable in some ways. They can fight back. I mean, Jamie Dimon has a lot of ability to fight back.
I hope you're right about that. I mean, the negotiation that I'm watching right now, or the deal, the merger sort of process, is the Warner Brothers Discovery. Who will get to buy it? Will it be Netflix, or will it be the Ellisons and Paramount, with Barry Weiss and the whole demise of CBS News? I mean, I don't get into too much media critiques, but this seems like a very dangerous and kind of, CNN is at risk, in fact, from this deal if it goes to the Ellisons and Paramount. So,
it is at risk. The media consolidation has been dangerous. It's been typical authoritarian playbook stuff.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do you think that that they've backed off, the FCC has backed off of this whole we'll do it the easy way or the hard way stuff? I mean, it seems like they're not exercising as much thug power as they were trying to before.
There's someone in my family who pays really close attention to this stuff. I'm married to her. She really pays very, very close attention to this. And I should ask Jennifer this. But there's nothing about any piece of this administration that says back off. There is something that says, we won't be the tip of the spear today. We're going to let other parts of the administration take the news. But they do not know reverse, these guys. They're going to keep going until we cut them off, and they can't keep going any further. So I don't think that they're not in the news as much. They're not, thumping their chests as much, but interfering. I mean, look what they've accomplished. They've destroyed CBS News. I mean, it's destroyed. It's
right.
It's got a.
I mean, I do think that if the Democrats can win the House, they have a chance to at least to stop whatever's coming down the pike in Congress and to elevate whatever they can't directly control into the public eye so that people know what's going on. I dare to hope that the Senate also will become a Democratic Senate. We'll have to see, but there's, candidate quality on the Democratic side is pretty good this year. So we'll see what happens. I also think there are things they can do that they're not doing, which is what this impeachment piece is about. So we'll see what happens with that.
I can't wait to read it. When's it coming out?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, I am.
It'll be this week for sure. I mean, coming the next few days.
I am all for. I mean, at the beginning of the show, I talked about impeachment. And Donald Trump saying, if the Democrats win, I'm going to be impeached. And for me, the list of high crimes and misdemeanors is very, very long. Like, amen. If Democrats win, you should be impeached. So should your cabinet. But the question is, why won't the Republicans do it? The Republicans of 10 years ago would have impeached Donald Trump and convicted him, I think. Not maybe 5 years ago, but 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
They would have impeached him and convicted him. Just like Democrats in Illinois threw out Rod Blagojevich, a Democratic governor. For most of our history, elected people have been able to put the country above their political party. Today's Republicans are just, Jill, they are not different than the CCP in China. They're not different than the United Russia Party of Putin's that say the party is the only thing that matters. We are going to stay, we are going to rule, and we don't care what we have to break in order to do it.
I would disagree slightly with that because I think that some of them are so physically scared, and I mean, some of them are politically scared. They might be primary. That I have no sympathy for. But if you've gotten death threats, if your kids have gotten threats, if your spouse has gotten threats, this is a brutal movement, and Trump does not do a thing to stop that. He fuels it.
So let's talk about that. I mean, the federal judges have gotten the same threats, and they've done their job. They've stood up and they've done their job. They've gotten those threats. We know they've gotten those threats. We know that their children are being threatened, and they stand up and they do their jobs. We also know that these same people in Congress send young Americans to go fight wars where they can get killed, really killed. And so when I have no sympathy for their physical. If they're scared, they should quit. Because we are in a moment when if they're going to sell out America because they got threatened, I'm sorry, Jill, all those people who are standing on my streets and in the streets of Minneapolis where ICE is pointing guns in their faces and sometimes pulling the trigger, and they still show up, and you're telling me it's okay for the members of the United States Senate to be too afraid to save the democracy? I do not have any patience for them. Forgive me.
No, I understand that completely. And I mean, the example was set in Indiana when the Republicans said, hell no, we won't go,
Right. There's plenty of courage out in the country. But in that city where you live in that capital, there seems to be a lack of courage. There's plenty to be had for people who call themselves Republicans out in the country, for sure.
I really don't know what's going on here. I mean, one of the people that puzzles me the most, and I'm not the only one, is Marco Rubio, because, he was, I remember when he was with McCain and negotiating on immigration way back when, and a bill that would have probably or possibly kept us out of the straits we're in now. If only, I mean, the Senate passed it, very bipartisan vote.
Yep.
And the House, I can't remember who was it was either Ryan or Boehner, somebody didn't bring it up, and the president, whoever it was, then didn't want it. It was just one of these, well, actually, it might have been Bush. Sorry, my memory is going on me, but it never got anywhere. And it didn't get where it should have gotten. And he backed off it. He said the country's not ready. Well, the country may have not been quite ready back then, but now it's going to reverse. And I'll tell you, my husband and I have been watching a TV show that's set in the 60s in England. And it is, I mean, I was a kid, and I don't really remember how harsh it was back then, but it's a real, the idea that we got out of the era where there was police corruption all over. It's just a standard thing where people hated gay people and oppressed them and killed them, and where women couldn't have family planning, and they couldn't have careers because of that, and they were just oppressed. Everybody was oppressed. The racial situation, I mean, we have gotten out of these eras, but man, it's been long and painful.
Right. And we're just not usually living through one where we're actively going backwards. And that's where these guys backwards. They want to take everything.
Yeah.
And we aren't going to let them. But it's going to be a brutal year. Before we get there, you and I are going to talk about election integrity and how we can maintain it coming into the new year, but we don't have to have that conversation today. Jill, I just looked up and we've run out of time. I can't believe it. Thank you so much, as always, for spending Saturday with me and helping people understand this world a little bit better.
Thank you for asking me. I enjoy talking to you always, Edwin.
Okay, what's the show? The 1960s show you're watching with your husband.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's called Inspector George Gently.
Okay, is it good?
And the first 4 seasons are on PBS.
Okay, good to know. All right, well, on that note, thank you, Jill, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Edwin.
Talk to you soon. Bye. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm joined by Don Moynihan when we get back. You want to hear that?
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Really a great pleasure to be joined again by Don Moynihan, who's professor at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy and the author of the absolutely essential Substack newsletter, Can We Still Govern? You have to pay attention to it. It is really, I have some favorites from last year that were just so terrific and important. I think about some of those pieces you wrote, like Purge, Merge, and Surge, which I hope living in Chicago in particular, I hope every American had the chance to read.
Yeah, thank you so much. I study public administration, and so one of the advantages or curses of that profession, if you like, is that I get to think about what the administrative machinery of government is doing. And sometimes when you see the wheels in motion, you can see where the vehicle is going. And so, for example, writing about DHS, in particular ICE and Customs and Border Patrol last year, it became clear there were some really big changes happening internally that would then have some profound effects on especially the democratic cities where those forces are being deployed. And we're seeing that play out now.
Yeah, we sure are. It's just disgusting. I think about the arc of what you've had to pay attention to. Thinking about government administration and how it can be done well and efficiently means one thing when the government is trying to govern and it's a sort of normal time and some programs work better than others, and why do they work better than others, and what can we learn from other governments around the world. And then, right now, I know you study government administration, but honestly, you are writing about freedom.
Yeah, so normally a lot of my research is on sort of boring stuff about how do you make administrative processes work slightly better, or how do you improve public personnel systems. But at the heart of administration is some concern for democracy and the system of government that allows us to feel like we're free citizens, that we have autonomy over our lives, that we can influence how we're governed. And normally we sort of take that connection for granted. We just sort of assume, well, we live in a democracy, the administration is going to be maybe a little inefficient, but mostly responsive to our interests. And that was true until, I think really this year when we are seeing what political scientists would call democratic backsliding or authoritarianism. And the vehicle to make that happen has been very much working through the administrative structures of government, where Trump has been consolidating power. And so now the connection between administration and our freedoms has just become so much more crystal clear than it was a year ago. And we find ourselves in I think, a sort of once in a century moment where every day you read the news and it's boils down to a set of values about how free do we think we are, how much the government is encroaching upon our freedoms, whether they're using these administrative tools in a way that just seems not just contrary to the law, but also sometimes the Constitution and our intuition about what it means to live in a democratic society.
I agree with you. The masks have fallen. We know what we face.
The masks have gone on in some cases as well, right? In rhetorical terms, the masks have fallen, but we also have never before seen the routine of masked officials waving guns at citizens and non-citizens alike as a commonplace in American cities in the way we're seeing now.
No, and it can never be. And I am proud of Americans for standing up and saying, no, we will never accept this. And in some cases, terribly giving their lives. Now, 2 people are dead at ISIS hands that I know of on the streets. Many more have been shot. And God knows how many have died in ICE custody.
Yeah, and I mean, this is ICE, CBP, these are really the most extreme examples because if you look at Trump's first year in office, he has basically cut state capacity in almost every area except among people who are carrying guns. And in particular, people who work in the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, and CBP especially. And so that is the one part of the administrative state where Trump has really invested a lot of resources, tried to recruit a lot of people, but then done things like cut the training of these new employees from 16 weeks to 6 weeks. They have no training in crowd control or dealing with the public. And now when they're dropped into these cities, a lot of what they're experiencing is there are crowds of irate, justifiably so, I think, protesters and people with guns and masks who have no real experience or training in how to de-escalate situations or how to manage protests. And so it's, it's just the recipe for a real disaster where I think I worry that we haven't seen the last incidents of excessive enforcement or violence on the part of these officials at this point, because what they seem to understand is if I shoot someone, there is no real meaningful punishment for that.
No, and the president will pardon me.
The president will go right out to his social media to defend you, will not promise a clear and thorough investigation. They will just, in a very knee-jerk and reflexive way, say, you're right to do whatever you did. And so, it certainly feels like we have the leader of an increasingly authoritarian government using these forces in our cities and our neighborhoods in a way where there's very little accountability. And the president's message is, I always have your back. It doesn't matter what you do to citizens or immigrants. And again, that really just seems like an invitation for excessive use of force. And unfortunately,
coercion is the thing they understand. Let's back up a little bit. You've been paid a lot of attention to this. Let's rewind a whole year. Because a year ago, almost a year ago, we had Doge step in and with great fanfare and say, we're going to make government more efficient. With the benefit of hindsight, what can you say about the Doge effort and what that has meant for America?
So I think the bottom line is Doge was a failure. And I would say a catastrophic failure, whether you judge it by its own terms, what it set out to do, or whether you use other criteria. And so let's think that through for a second. Doge said they were going to come in, cut the deficit in half, identify lots of wasteful spending, and they simply didn't do that, right? They have not reduced the rate of government spending. The federal government is spending pretty much what it was, a little bit more than it was before Doge took over. They haven't found the claimed endemic fraud that they said was throughout government. Many of the claims they made about cutting grants and spending turned out to be untrue. And so they failed on those terms. And then I think they failed on the terms that a lot of other people would worry about. So one is, I think about government capacity a lot, like just, do we have skilled, capable employees in government? And now, because of Doge, we have 300,000 less federal government employees than we had at the start of the year. It's actually a little higher than that. It's about 320,000. And it's not as if there was some careful process of identifying who are the good performers, who are the poor performers, who should we keep, who should be let go. Doge basically pushed everyone to the exit door. And so we might expect that the people who are most likely to resign will be people who think, oh, I can easily get a job in the private sector. And so, it certainly wasn't a performance-driven approach. And I think DOGE has also been a moral failure. In the greater scheme of history, maybe the most consequential thing the Trump administration did in its first year was to dismantle USAID. And that was very much a DOGE project. According to experts in development, that is already costing tens of thousands of lives. In the long run, will lead to millions of deaths, because USAID was actually a fairly efficient means of providing aid and support to some of the most vulnerable people in the world. And that, it really just feels like a moral atrocity, where the richest man in the world made a decision that is going to lead to the deaths of the most vulnerable people in the world. And it feels like there's been just no accountability for that.
There's been no accountability for anything yet, but you also wrote about that. I guess I'll turn to that, because one of your pieces said America needs a new theory of accountability, and I thought that was interesting too. So since we're there, talk about that.
Yeah, I think this is, like I said earlier, I think we're the once in a century moment in thinking through how should our government work, and this is partly because of long-standing tensions between the right and the left, and also because Trump has brought this to the fore. So, Trump's model of government is, I'm just going to do it, and if you don't like it, sue me. And that was sort of his model as a businessman. And I perceive there is, a growing interest on the left in saying, okay, how can we take that model if we eventually retake power? And I think that is sort of a mistake. In particular, I think the idea that you can just push forward, break laws, and then pick up the pieces later really runs contrary to what we expect a democracy to provide, which is not just the provision of services, but the guarantee that it's done in some way that reflects our common values. So things like transparency, or not having corrupt processes by which government contracts are handed out, or not having very obvious conflicts of interest when, for example, the president hands out pardons to people who are major investors or promoters of his family businesses. And the public actually does care about this stuff. So there's this sort of debate now, if you look in discussions about abundance, for example, among progressive circles about, historically, have progressives tied their own hands too much when it comes to governing? And I'm actually quite sympathetic to that debate, but I think there's a danger that it could teeter over into an acceptance that, anything goes. And when you have power, you use it to the maximal amount. And so what that new theory of accountability is going to look like, I'm not sure. I think there are some existing mechanisms of accountability that are too procedural, that have too many veto points, that slow down things like infrastructure building or building new housing. On the other hand, what replaces those procedures? How does the public still feel like we have a seat at the table, our voice is being heard, we can trust that government is mostly honest most of the time?
That's a very profound and difficult question, the balance point. I mean, I was a local elected official and dealt with these issues every day in part of my life. They're very complicated, how you balance moving things forward, getting things done, things that everybody wants done, but a few people, but they don't want them done there, right? They want them done, but they don't want them done next to their house, or they want them done, but they, and these are tough, complicated problems in a democracy. And as you say, we can't just pretend they don't exist and say it's all up to the king to decide. We have to have a mechanism, and I don't know how we even have that conversation, Don, though, while we're having this other conversation about whether we even have a democracy. I think we have to get through one to get to the other.
Yeah, it's an incredible moment. Lots of people have their own Project 2029 planned.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's hard, at least for me, to see beyond the sort of haze or the fog of war of what's happening right now to think about what does 2029 look like. I mean, I think we're going to have to just see how bad things get before we understand what a recovery looks like.
Yeah.
But to your point, I started teaching my students. So I teach graduate students here at the University of Michigan, my introduction to public management class. And one of the starting points is you talk about trade-offs and competing values. And the reason a lot of services are in the public sector is that they're not simple enough to contract out to the private sector.
Right.
And so this is also very frustrating because you're constantly then trying to manage competing values like doing things quickly versus getting public input and making sure the decisions you make have democratic acceptance and values baked into them. And so you're constantly balancing lots of different things. And if you get one of those things wrong, you can be crucified as an elected official in a way that the public, they don't always necessarily think about those other trade-offs when you're in the eye of the storm. And so it requires, I think, a level of patience and civic education to constantly remind people, government is not a business. It is owned by all citizens. The president is not a CEO. He's not a king. He is accountable to the legislature, to the public, to pass laws, to inspector generals. And that's the tension we're seeing play out now, because the Trump theory of governing is I'm not accountable.
L'état, c'est moi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one more thing on this. I remember back when I was a local elected official, there were city planners who said to me, our job as city planners is to make sense of the insanity you local elected people do every day. And I said to them, no, my job as a political person is to make possible your pie in the sky dreams. It's a very complicated thing that we engage in between folks who want to move in a direction and a society that is complicated.
Yeah, and that's a classic tension that plays out at every level of government, where elected officials and the full-time employees just come to the world with different perspectives, and to some degree that creates misunderstanding. And I think one minor point on that is with the Trump administration, as much as they've complained about the deep state and not being able to get things done in the first administration, I think that was partly a reflection of the fact that they didn't understand how government works. And they didn't have the patience to learn about that. And so when they tried to do things and they didn't have the capacity to do them, they just blamed the system. Whereas in the second term, they've done their homework and they very much understand how government works now. And they've, used every lever and mechanism to shift it in their direction.
Yep. In the direction of maintaining power. It's a strange thing. They haven't shifted it, I don't think, to work better for the American people. They've shifted it to work. It's a different question. You wrote something else. And in fact, recently, I've been in these conversations a lot lately where people talk about the right wing in America, and they make a distinction between the corporate interests that have bought a lot of the government, my words, not yours, and what goes on online, these battles online. The crazy social media WrestleMania world where the far right and even farther right seem to be arguing with each other. And the rest of the news media makes a big deal about the fact that the farthest right and the almost farthest right are arguing. It seems that kind of blather has replaced political thinking in large parts of the country. And on cue, you just wrote this fabulous piece, which you call the clicktatorship. So talk about that too.
Yeah, I think the images that came out during the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, where Trump was posting sort of Potemkin version of the Bin Laden raid situation room. And so there's this sort of
Right.
classic image of when President Obama is overseeing the Bin Laden raid, and Trump posted lots of pictures that looked sort of like that, right? There were, it was in Mar-a-Lago, but it had all of these images of federal officials looking very serious, staring at a screen. And then in a couple of them, you look in the background and on a big screen, you can see X, and you can
X.
see a large emoji and a
Uh-huh.
search term for Venezuela. And I think that captured something sort of profound, which is the Trump administration is not just using social media to push narratives and messaging, although they are certainly doing that, but they're also, I think, very much influenced by that social media, right? And the way in which we might think about someone having an addiction to drugs or alcohol as a potential risk for how they would do their job as a policymaker, I think we should think about social media addiction in the same way, where people whose brains have been cooked for many years on social media, who were just like constantly posting, um, are now in real positions of power, and they don't seem to be able to leave that social media world behind and adapt. They're governing as if they are posters. And I think that is profoundly damaging, especially to our traditional expectations of, what we think a government official should be able to provide for us. Right. And so when you see things like Pam Bondi going in front of the Senate or Kash Patel, and we have an expectation that the Senate can ask questions and we, the public, are somehow represented by their questions. And then these administration officials respond. And instead of getting a real response, what you get is these sort of zingers that are crafted for social media. And there's just sort of a lack of seriousness that feels endemic in this process here, where again, I think people have just sort of gotten to a point where they're not really engaged in the social business of government as much as they are in trying to boost their social media profiles in ways that I think are pretty unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, can we go the next step and say to this crowd, um, um, how you appear in social media is governing, is the purpose of governing, because that's a I don't want to say it's a form of reality. I don't believe that, but it's an illusion they believe in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a commonplace that Twitter is not the real world. But then you have officials who act as if it is. And we used to think about Trump's tendencies. I think in 2016 we would have noticed how many people he was bringing in from Fox News, and that's also true with this administration. There's about 2 dozen Fox News officials who joined the administration. So we thought about him, I think, a little bit as a TV president. Um, but I think in his second term, it's more accurate to think of him as a social media president,
Yeah.
where they think about decisions partly through what sort of content will this generate online. And so if we send, effectively a small army of CBP officials or ICE officials to raid an apartment building in Chicago, that's great content. Like they
With
can
a
make
Black Hawk helicopter.
with people rappelling down from a Black Hawk
Yep.
helicopter and swinging into the building. It looks like a video game. And in turn, they're using that content to recruit more people to join ICE and CBP. what happened inside the building is they didn't actually find any of the violent immigrants that they promised. There was no criminal charges that resulted from this massive raid.
Nope.
So you get the sense that what was the purpose here? I think maybe it was just to generate social media content.
Well, I mean, right. And that is, should be criminal behavior in an administration. It's certainly, from the point of view of things you study, an enormously expensive use of taxpayer resources for a cause that, let's see, there were 0 Tren de Agua charges resulting from that, 0. And yeah. But,
Yeah.
So they live in this world, Don, but the world turns out not to be as simple as they think, because then they kill somebody like they did this week. And they want to pretend, then they have to reinvent a story about her. They have to turn this mom into a terrorist. And that's harder to do. And it becomes increasingly harder to do. And the gap between what they need to do to keep this up and what the rest of us experience as reality gets bigger and bigger.
I think that's right. And like one thing I wrote about yesterday online was just recalling the fact that months ago I'd written something about DHS and their tendency towards lying. And so there was one spokesperson in particular where if there is a DHS shooting, you will predictably hear her come out and say, oh, this officer was acting in self-defense. The person had tried to ram them with their vehicle. And that has happened multiple times now throughout last year. In Chicago, one person was shot 5 times.
Yep.
And that was the claim, that the person was targeting this DHS official. And then they tried to charge her with domestic terrorism. The charges fell apart. But you see that pattern, and I think it does connect to the social media tendency, which is you just try to get your word out. You don't wait to determine the facts. You get your narrative out there. You emphasize it and repeat it as much as you can to try to overwhelm people's critical faculties and dissenting voices. And so when we saw what happened in Minneapolis happen, or then day later in Portland, it was completely predictable. I wrote before the statement came out, watch for the statement from Tricia McLaughlin from DHS to say this was a weaponization of these vehicles, because it doesn't really matter what the facts on the ground are. They're going to say it anyway.
Let me ask you where you think this is going. Here, when 80% of the country knows they're lying and disapproves of, well, 60% easily disapprove of the actions of this administration, and it's higher when we talk about like the ICE raids in Chicago. So the majorities of Americans don't believe this, don't like it. This rhetoric, I think, continues to push that majority away, but it further radicalizes a small group. And there are enormous dangers in that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this has been the story of American politics for the last generation, is this growing polarization, but also, I think, a radicalization. And I think about that in a couple of ways here. One is, you have online figures, and again, figures that the administration is very connected to or has recruited. Like some of these figures work for government now, where they're pushing content and explanations that just a few years ago would have been deemed unacceptable. And, like take
They're
Venezuela.
Still unacceptable. Just because they don't say so doesn't make it
should still be unacceptable. But like on Venezuela now, a common social media line among the president's supporters is, we're going in to take the oil. That's what we should do. We're not there to promote democracy. We're just there to grab other people's resources.
Yes, and put them, by the way, in my personal account, and I will personally oversee where the money goes.
And the degree to which Trump said that, and then overnight, like people just signed on to that idea as appropriate or even celebrated it is really sort of remarkable. I think there are probably breaking points here where Minnesota, the shooting there, may be one of them, where I think if you're a fair-minded person and you look at those videos, you have a hard time thinking that this is anything other than excessive use of force.
I agree.
And so when you hear the statements by the administration, you watch the videos, then you have to choose, are you going to believe your own interpretation of the world, or are you going to listen to President Trump or Secretary Noem or the DHS spokespeople? Yeah. Ultimately, the process of radicalization does not appear to be slowing down. I also worry it's not just an online phenomena. We're rapidly expanding ICE and CBP, and even if at some point in the future those agencies are abolished or radically reduced, you're going to have tens of thousands of officials that were recruited for this mission of brutalizing democratic cities, who've been armed and trained, and some of them probably believe in this mission, who will then be civilians. And how are they going to think about changes that they don't like?
Our own debathification problem. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Don, we're out of time. I love these conversations. Your work is just phenomenal. Please tell people how to find it.
If you just Google "Can We Still Govern?" or go to Substack and type in Don Moynihan, you can find my work.
Yeah, and please, everybody, find Don's work. It is terrific. Thank you, Don. I really appreciate it. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. I am joined by Matt Caffrey. You remember him? I think we talked last September, maybe. Yep. He is Swing Left's director of organizing, and in these terrible times, he helps remind us that there are actually things we can and should be doing to flip the narrative and to win back our country and our government. Matt, welcome.
Edwin, thanks so much for having me. It's always great to be with you.
When we last spoke, you were just launching what you called Ground Truth, a new organizing method. So tell everybody what that is again and talk about how that's going.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just as a quick refresh, Swing Left exists to help anyone, anywhere in the country, find the highest impact ways to help shift the national balance of power away from MAGA and toward, something that makes sense a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. And, we've done incredible work together over the past several years, but, obviously 2024 was a wake-up call that we needed to radically shift our work and learn from what wasn't working, right? This movement emerged to achieve one thing, which is to end MAGA as a political force. And we obviously did not succeed in that effort. And so we need to reinvent the work that we're doing together so that we can, win and start building the world that we all want to see. And Ground Truth is really working to address every piece of a broken voter contact puzzle. From the voters that we target, to the ways that we talk to them, to the way that information is shared, the goals that are set. We think that the technology tools that are used, we think basically every piece of this is broken, and we're trying to sort of fix it all the way up and down so that we can have really meaningful, effective conversations with voters that begin to pull people back in our direction. And I have to say, right now, our focus is on the House. And weeks like this, you can really feel why Democrats need, subpoena power, oversight authority. You can feel the difference that a Democratic House would make on driving budget decisions that, for example, might halt this massive expansion of ICE. It's weeks like this that show us why we need to win back Congress so desperately this fall. And we know we cannot wait to start on that work. If we are going to win, we can't rest on our laurels. We had a great 2025. People are feeling good. But the pit we found ourselves in at the end of 2024 is deep. And I think we need to keep our eyes on the long term, rebuilding trust, rebuilding our relationships and communities, And that's what Ground Truth begins to do.
Well, the way you describe Ground Truth to me, which is really organizing all the time, not just at election time, it's sort of what I know the Wisconsin Democratic Party did, and that's how they began to change that state. So it's sort of a model that the technology may be different, but the emphasis on being with people in their communities, voters, all the time, not just showing up at election time, we've seen that model work.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example. The work that the Wisconsin Democrats have done is incredible. I think what we hear across the country is that voters feel like no one is listening to them, that no one cares about them, that the system is broken, that both parties suck, frankly. And, there's something radical about showing up at somebody's door and saying, hi, I'm a volunteer. I'm helping Democrats to really deeply listen to what voters care about. I want to hear, what do you think about the direction of the country? What do you think could be done to make your life and to make your community's lives better? And what we're finding is that voters want to talk. When we go to people's doors or when we call them on the phone, we're having long, 10 or 15-minute conversations where voters really just gush with all of their fears and their thoughts and their feelings. And I think it is beginning, it's like a first step toward repairing some of the cancer that has eroded our democratic, lowercase d democratic values in this country. And the other thing we're finding is that volunteers are able to record really, really incredible notes that are going to be so helpful as we continue talking to that voter across, everything from digital to mail to ads to another door knock or a phone call. The information voters are sharing with us really give us such good insights into how we can talk to folks and persuade them and bring them back in our direction. So, the pilot we ran in 2025, we had about 30 canvases all across the country. Volunteers loved it. 93% said they'd do it again. They'd recommend it to a friend. The conversations we were having were meaningful. People were willing to talk. That we were collecting really critically important information that can help. And, Ground Truth is designed to facilitate those conversations, to generate that incredible learning, and then to share it back with campaigns in the party so that it can make everything we do as a party better at speaking to voters' concerns and making sure that voters are feeling heard.
Is the intimidation, the criminalization of protest, the let's call it what it is, murder of dissenters by this administration, making the job of organizing to defeat this administration more frightening, or is it the greatest recruitment tool you've ever had?
Honestly, I think it is an incredible recruitment tool. Just seeing
Americans are brave. That's what I was hoping you would say.
I think so. We have seen such an uptick in activism across the country, not just Swing Left, but Indivisible and so many other groups. We're seeing this groundswell where folks are brave, that citizens are, standing up for our democracy, for our neighbors. And it's been really, really inspiring. As we enter this election year, the protesting is important. The ICE Watch and all the stuff that activists are doing across the country is critically important. I guess my message for everybody is we have to walk and chew gum at the same time, because we know the only way out of this mess is to win elections. We can reduce the damage, we can push back, we can fight back in the streets, but getting a majority of Americans to say, yes, I want the future that Democrats are proposing and to come out and vote is ultimately how this all ends. And so, it's election year. It's time to get going. And so we're encouraging everybody, we're going to start knocking doors and making phone calls 2 weeks from today. If folks want to learn more and to take action, they can go to swingleft.org/commit. It is absolutely not too early to start. I think some people are like, I'll wait until Labor Day. But that is how we get into this mess. People feel like they're not heard. They feel like Democrats don't care about them because we show up, we talk to too few people. We start too late. Our messages are too narrow. And so this deep listening, deeply hearing from voters, and making sure that they feel heard, that they feel valued by the Democratic Party, by our candidates, that is a big part of how we get out of this mess. and we've got to start now. That doesn't mean folks should not be going to vigils or, whatever. All of the things people are doing to fight back in other ways are also important. I'm not not here to discourage anyone from participating in that stuff, and I really applaud the bravery of activists in Minnesota in particular this week. But I think we've got to do both.
Do you think? I have some listeners who are so fed up they just think the two-party system is no longer serving the country if it ever did, and that we need to have a multi-party democracy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I'm sympathetic to some extent, right? I mean, look, I think if you're not frustrated by the Democratic Party or Democrats, you're probably not paying attention. But only the Democratic Party has the potential to become the party we need in this country. The two-party system, I studied political science in college. Moving away from the two-party system would require constitutional amendments, basically, that I don't think I'll live to see. But the Democratic Party has and can be the party that stands up for working people, that stands up for democracy. And actually, when we build power door to door, when we build it conversation to conversation, it shifts the incentives and it actually builds a better Democratic Party. It's one of the things I love about our work at Swing Left. When the party achieves power through grassroots organizing, it is less susceptible to corporate lobbying. It is less, it actually changes the culture and the norms within the Democratic Party, and it makes the Democratic Party better. So even though, Swing Left, we don't get involved in primaries. We stay, ruthlessly, pragmatically focused on general election races that are really competitive from red to blue, and all we're trying to do is win them for Democrats. But by doing that through grassroots organizing and fundraising, through people power, I always say that they have organized money and we have organized people, but we make that so by organizing. When we show up and do the work, that is what makes the Democratic Party the party of the people. And so, yeah, I would say, look, it's not perfect. It's a long way from perfect. It's a hell of a lot better than the other folks. And I think we can, by just leaning in, we can shift the culture of the party and make it the party we all want it to be.
Yeah, I've talked a lot on the show about organized money versus organized people. I think that's exactly right. I also think, and when you go out and talk to neighbors and talk about what they want to see in their communities and their country, they also tend to say, can I do this too? And join in on that conversation. And this doesn't just build a healthier political party and a healthier politics. It builds stronger communities.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's worth doing all year long because it helps we don't have, there's that, Robert Putnam, way old bowling alone thing.
Yes.
We don't do as much of that. In America these days, the only thing we're really doing it in is at least in the moment we're living in, is political organizing.
This is why I love coming on your show, Edwin, because any Robert Putnam bowling alone references bring me great joy. No, but exactly. We're in the middle of an epidemic of loneliness. I think it has gotten worse since 2024.
It's gotten worse since social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think when we go out and have real connections with other people, when we hear them and we see them as other humans and we make them feel seen, it really does build trust and community. And that's what we desperately need. It's not just, it's not just that the Republican Party is broken. It's not just that our politics are broken. It's not just that, our media landscape is broken. There is something in our democracy that is broken just because we are so separated from each other. And, I think we like how Ground Truth is trying to fix every part of the pipeline of voter contact. We have to work on every part of repairing our democracy at once. We have to have community. We have to build trust. We have to have conversations. And that's part of how we, fix our politics and how we fix the authoritarian, tendencies in the Republican Party and everything else. So I totally agree with you.
Matt, how do you reach out to? Let me not presuppose. What's the age of the people you're contacting when you go out?
Great question. And I kind of left something really critical out. part of our critique of the way Democrats have been doing voter contact is that we target too narrowly. We have just been going to a small slice of people we think would vote for Democrats, but might not vote. So we're just trying to go out and encourage them to vote. But when we do that, especially based on imperfect data, we are leaving out a huge chunk of possible voters that might vote for a Democrat. Yeah. So we are now knocking on every single door.
Good.
When we go to neighborhoods, we are not skipping one door. We'll talk to everyone at that door, whether they're registered or not, and we'll try to have meaningful conversations. So, in terms of which age groups are we targeting, we're targeting everybody. And
good. But I mean, it's sometimes I think the disconnect amongst young Americans. Mm. I mean, I taught. I sometimes teach at DePaul University, and the kids that I teach. Donald Trump is the America they know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Since it's half their lives, he's been dominating our politics. They have no memory of, no experience of a different kind of an America. They sort of have heard of it, that America was once a kinder place, where a Republican would talk about a kinder, gentler America, right? I mean, they don't have that experience. And so are you able to get to, the young people I know are the most afraid and angry, and in some ways, both passionately engaged and chronically disengaged.
Yes. Well, and let me say, part of, again, the critique of the way Democrats have been doing voter contact for years that we talked about is that there's just less data available on young voters. And when there's less data about a voter, Democrats are less likely to target them because we don't want to accidentally talk to somebody who might vote for a Republican or that we're not confident is a good use of our time. So we've just left a lot of young voters out of conversations.
Yeah, really stupid.
It's really not great. And again, this is part of how we can actually reach these folks. You're absolutely right. When voters, new voters today, they were in elementary school when Barack Obama was president.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't have that context of what a better America might look like. I do think it's such a critical thing to have conversations with those folks. I don't know if we have broken down our data by young voters, but across the board, we're hearing from everybody that the system is broken. And that will end up, one of the things we're finding is that people aren't like single issue voters. Like, it's not like, oh, this person cares about the immigration system, so that's why they're going to vote. They care about a lot of different issues, a lot of different topics. And it kind of gets conflated in, again, like, nobody's thinking about me, nobody's on my side, the system is broken. And that is like tied to affordability. Young people, I think, have the most struggles with affordability in our system. I think it's all conflated, and we're hearing, from the doors and from the phones, people really are desperate to emote, to talk, to express. And I think they really value being heard. I guess one other thing I think is so important is, of people who are existing Democratic data says are very likely Republicans, a quarter are expressing that they are open to voting for a Democrat or have major reservations about Trump. These are people who never in a million years would have been contacted by traditional campaign tactics.
Hey, let me just stop there because I want to explore that a little bit, because I don't want to completely bury Democrats by talking about things they've done wrong. And when you're the people and who are responsible for the decisions to ignore voters who might not, to focus only on likely voters who will turn out, to focus on turnout as opposed to everything else, really. These are campaign professionals and the money in politics. Because candidates across the board that I know think that's insane and have always thought that's insane. But the group of people who've sort of created we run campaigns, we give, we consult to campaigns, we know how to target your money, folks, have driven things that way, much to the frustration of so many good candidates.
Absolutely. And, all you need to do is look at our wins from 2025 to see candidates who think differently and who have been running campaigns that are more centered on listening.
Yeah.
Mikey Sherrill, Abigail Spanberger, Delegate Jessica Anderson has a great quote that, somebody emailed her the day after the election saying she's a lifelong Republican, but she voted for Delegate Anderson because she kept showing up. Mamdani obviously built this massive, biggest in New York history
show up machine,
voter contact program.
Yep.
And I think it is not that there aren't well-intentioned, hardworking, amazing people working in Democratic politics. I think it's an entire interlocking system. And that's why, we're trying to kind of tackle it all. We have sent a lot of volunteers to go do door-to-door voter contact for turnout. And that has won close elections. It's not like it can't work, but it didn't work when,
we needed it.
Yeah,
didn't
exactly.
work when we needed it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it is not that it isn't, that there's no rationality to it or that it's an insane thing to do, although, whatever. But it's just that we are forced by the conditions we are in to grapple with, we are not doing things the best way we could be. And we need to invent a new approach if we're going to end the mess we're in.
Yeah, and I mean there are resource constraints. I mean you're gonna target as well, maybe not target likely voters, but you're going to target states and races.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So talk about where the focus is.
Right now, it is on the House. We know that, as I was saying, before, this week is an incredibly powerful reminder of why we need Democrats to control the House after this November's election, to have subpoena power, to have oversight authority, to control the purse strings.
Oh my God, just to have a legislature as opposed to being in the witness protection program, which is what Mike Johnson has done. Where are the Republicans? I don't know. They don't show up. They get paid. They hide.
Yes.
So we need to actually have a legislative body start to do its job.
Exactly. And, Democrats, we lost the House in 2024 by just 7,300 votes, which is it eats us all up inside at Swing Left because, we came so close to winning the majority. But that
by the way,
means...
Side bet, I bet that before the next election, Hakeem Jeffries will be the speaker.
I would love to see it, and it's not impossible. But meanwhile, we're going to keep our heads down and focused again.
Give them the majority he needs to win, to get the votes done. Yeah.
And, because of Trump's unprecedented mid-decade redistricting push, because of the assaults on the Voting Rights Act, because of all the lies and propaganda and misinformation and everything, we can't take this for granted. They're going to do everything in their power to prevent us from winning back the House. Trump just recently said, if Democrats win back the House, they'll impeach me. He's clearly running scared. And
I don't know why the Republicans won't. I mean, they put party over country. That's what they've done. Like the Chinese Communist Party, like every other fascist party in history, they put their party over their country. Otherwise, they'd impeach them for clear high crimes and misdemeanors that every American can see.
Exactly.
The emperor of the Americas. Yeah.
They're spineless, so they're not going to do it. And, that means we have to beat them in November, or as you say before, we're going to stay ruthlessly, pragmatically focused on the 33 districts we've identified. We may continue to adjust our targeting, but, we've identified 19 opportunities to flip red districts blue. We've identified 14 must-hold Democratic seats, some of which have gotten redder because of redistricting, some of which were just very, very close in 2024. A couple that are close-ish to folks in the Chicagoland area, Michigan 4 in Southwest Michigan. That is an absolutely flippable district, reasonable driving distance from Chicago. Something like Wisconsin 3 in Western Wisconsin. Again, a deeply flippable district. Here in my home state, we've got Ohio 1 and Ohio 3, where Republicans took aim at Democrats through a mid-decade redistricting. Those districts are tough, but we can defend Greg Landsman and Amelia Sykes with good organizing.
I like Greg a lot.
Yeah,
I think
he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
By the way, it's just, I know this isn't Swing Left's thing, but since you're in Ohio, I think Amy Acton and my friend David Pepper might actually be able to take back the governor's spot in that state. And oh my God, what a blessing that would be.
It would be. Like in so many states, Republicans have taken an axe to public education funding, to local government funding. They have, Ohio has dropped from, top 10 in the nation for education and for, the business environment to bottom, quarter.
Yeah, it's also more corrupt than my state of Illinois now.
It's insanely
you have the
corrupt.
biggest corruption scandals in the country. So
the FBI said it was the most corrupt state house in the nation. Yeah, exactly. So, right. We'll see. Ohio has disappointed me a lot in recent cycles, but I do think that there's a possibility as especially parents across our state wake up and realize, we are making the charter schools and private schools rich instead of getting our kids a quality education. Yep. The charters in our state spend a smaller percentage of their funding in the classroom, but more overall. They are not providing services to kids with learning disabilities or other special needs. They are performing more poorly on every metric. They're held to lower standards. It just doesn't make sense. And it's draining resources from our public schools. And I think that could be the issue that flips our state, but we'll see.
We'll see. And how about North Carolina? Is that on your radar screen?
It absolutely is. We are right now ruthlessly, pragmatically focused on the House, as I talked about, but we are watching the Senate because we know the Senate is critically important, especially by 2028. And so right now we're looking at the Senate race in North Carolina and a few other states as possible opportunities to gain some ground and put ourselves in a position to win the Senate in 2028. So, we're not working there yet, but we are closely monitoring it. And
good.
Yeah. I'm very optimistic about North Carolina. I'm excited to see what can happen there.
Sure. I mean, they're gerrymandering, and they tried to steal a judicial election. They tried to disqualify tens of thousands of voters. This is what we're up against across the country from these guys.
The North Carolina legislature may be the strongest sort of anti-democratic. The way that they took power away from a Democratic governor after he was elected.
It's what Scott Walker and the Republicans did in Wisconsin decades ago. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Now it's in North Carolina.
Yep, exactly.
But they have Anderson Clayton to contend with.
Yeah, exactly. And she's a force of nature. Yeah, we're excited to see what happens there. There's a lot of exciting races across the country. Democrats feel like we've got our wind at our backs. We cannot take a single thing for granted. We have to start now. We have to actually talk to people and listen to them, make them feel heard. I think everybody relates to the kind of almost the pessimism of a lot of, the system is broken. I don't know a whole lot of Democratic volunteers who feel differently. I think everybody gets that. But we all have a role in fixing it. And
Matt, can I say it differently? I don't think the system is broken.
Yeah.
I think the system is bought, and it works for the people who bought it.
Yes.
So it's not broken. It is delivering for the people who bought it. And that is something that we can fix. If we win, we can pass those bills that came so close last time that will take some of the money out of politics, that will begin to say to the billionaire class that declared war on the rest of us in their big, beautiful bill, you pay more in your taxes through your tariffs. In fact, you pay so much that I don't have to pay 1 penny for my wedding in Venice because it'll all be paid for by taxpayers in what I get back, which is what happened for Jeff Bezos. They declared war on, they declared what's yours is ours. And you know what? When we get it back, we can begin to fix this system, this broken system, so that we don't need to steal what's theirs, but we need to say what value we create, we get to keep some of it. Sorry, buddy, we get to keep some of it. And so I don't want to go down the broken system stuff, because this system is working really well for the people who bought it.
Right. And it's working as intended by the designers, but it's not working for ordinary people across the country.
Not at all. Right. Yeah. Because they bought it. And we need to take their money and say, you know what, we're either going to take your money or we're going to take your money out of politics. It's your choice, because you don't get to have that power over us.
Yes. I think, voting rights reform, electoral reform, campaign finance, it's all going to be critically important when and if we are lucky enough to get out of this mess. But I'll also say, we've got to do something about healthcare with premiums soaring all across the country right now. we'll see what happens with this House bill that just recently passed, extending the tax credits. I don't know if the Senate will act on that or not. But, we've got to address things that I think, it is important to talk about democracy. It's important to make democracy work for people, but also the way that we show that democracy works for people is addressing their material needs and speaking to their concerns. So we have to do both.
We have to make the connection for people that if your legislators are working for you, your life will get better. If they're working for somebody else, your life is going to get worse.
Yes.
And they work for you when democracy works. So let's make it work.
Exactly.
All right, Matt, how do people sign up?
So folks can go to swingleft.org/commit to learn more, sign up. There's opportunities to host canvases in your community, to help with canvases, to go knock doors, to make phone calls, if that's what you're able to do, especially, depending on where you live. So swingleft.org/commit. Folks should get started now. Our first canvases are going to be 2 weeks from today, and hope folks can get out and join us.
All right, everybody, please do this. It isn't just enough to recognize that the president is a dangerous dictator, felon, who says the only thing that can stop him is his own moral compass, and we know he doesn't have one.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, he's convicted sexual assault, convicted of fraud. We know he's a liar. We know he wants to be an emperor. He has no... Right. All of that's true. And being in a rage about it doesn't change it. But going out and talking to your neighbors does. So please take Matt's advice, sign up. And you know what? It isn't just good for the country. It'll make you happy.
Exactly.
It does. It makes people happy to do this.
Yes. People have been raving about their experience, about the opportunity to really have deep and meaningful conversations with voters. I want to echo everything you said. This is not just good for the country. It's not just good for your community. It is good for your soul. It's good for your mental health. Yep. So go get involved.
Thanks, Matt, very much.
Thanks,
good luck out there.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay, folks, 773-763-9278. I am taking your calls, and Jim, kick us off.
Hi, Edwin. I'm all for suspending elections until the century turns to 2022 and let the Trump bloodline continue to rule. And the reason for it being, think of it, he's got 2 sons, he's got a third son, 3 sons, and he's probably sired a few children as a pedophile, an active pedophile for years. So he's got plenty of his bloodline could exist, maybe past the 22nd century. And why not? Who needs America any longer? I mean, we have the Trump dynasty, which you have to admit is very alluring. I mean, I'm not going to live that much longer, but my point is, think of the young kid being born today. He can live in a land of absolute suppression and be a feudal worker for whatever wage they determine, especially in these AI conglomerates where they make nothing at all, but they can fill them up and they'll feed us information until for the near future, if we don't eventually get into World War III. But anyway, what do you think, Edwin?
You know what I think. I think it's fun to think about. It's fun to talk about that way. But of course, I recognize satire when I hear it.
No, I know. But you know what? Was Maduro a drug czar or was he an oil thief? What do you think? Which one do you go with?
No, whatever he was a bad guy. But
no, but
that doesn't mean we can have
the Republicans are defining him. They took him here as a drug czar. That was the first excuse why they killed 100 Venezuelans. I don't care how bad he is. What about the 100 Venezuelans they buried? Were they all bad guys too? Or were they bad guys? I don't think they were bad guys. I never heard it, unless all 100 of them were just bad guys. But
war is a bad thing, man.
Well, it was completely unnecessary, first of all. And then Trump says he's going to take the proceeds and put them offshore. Now, what president of the United States is going to start putting their money offshore? Edwin, this is no baloney. My younger brother, this is 4 years ago, he came in a pretty good chunk of dough, and he called me up. He said, Jim, they want me to put it offshore. I said, listen. I said, you blow money so fast, you'll have to swim to get it. I mean, what if it goes wrong offshore? But, you know, I mean, you can imagine what happened.
No. That's not what's happening. This notion that we're going to put the oil revenue offshore means we're putting it into Trump's Bitcoin, Trump's digital currency. Yeah. It means it's going to be somewhere where we can't see it, so they can just steal it. It's just corrupt to the core.
No, I know, but how these Republicans, how are they so cowed by this individual? As you started out today, and as the doctor said, our big battle going forward, even with young voters, is information. We have to have reliable information that's discernible. You've got to be able to recognize reality when you see it, because otherwise, I mean, what's the point? I mean, what 9 days, 10 days into this month, it feels like it's the longest 10 days I can remember. Anyway, Edwin, have a good week, and thanks, Bill. Thank you.
Sure, you bet. Thank you for calling. Nancy, how are you? Happy New Year.
Hey, Edwin, Happy New Year. Although I don't think it's going to be. But, I want to congratulate you. Every single one of your guests proved my point that I've been screaming about for the last 50 years.
I asked one about you. Did you pay attention when I asked specifically for you about the two-party system?
Oh, yes, just this last guest, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Oh, it was developed. It was never developed to cover democracy. It was developed right from day one to be an undemocratic two-party system. Here's the problem. We had 4 million people in the country at the time. We have 100 times that now, and the government did not evolve and grow with the country, with the population. We are much more diversified. So far, we have women can still vote and minorities can still vote, but they're working on that. And the one thing I disagree with you on is when you said the system isn't broken, it's just bought. No, the system is broken, and it's proven by the fact that it's been bought. And they've been telling us for how long? We're getting money out of politics. No, the Democratic Party is not a unified party. We need more choices. And now you're telling me that our Constitution is going to stop us anyway. Even as much as the majority wants more choices, you don't know how many times I've heard, well, it's just the best of two evils. Well, it shouldn't be. We should have more choices. We can't even get ranked choice voting. Why? Because they still, from day one, they still treat us like 10-year-olds. Oh, no, you can't swear and you can't do this and you can't do that. But we could murder people on national television. That's okay. If we had a democratic system that really was true democracy, which, by the way, we don't have in this country right now, my point of view is we never really had it, but that's another story for another time. But they did win on January 6th. Of course they did. Because were they stopped for that day? Yeah. Was he ever convicted, even though Jack Smith just got on TV or they just showed the tape, whatever? And, he was definitely proven guilty. Is he going to pay the price? No, he isn't. And none of them are. Because why? Because I don't care what kind of laws you're saying we have, which we don't. They don't enforce them. So they go and, now the judge said, they can't keep that money from the states that they're blocking it from. Okay. So are they going to give it over to them? I bet not. You want to make a bet? I'll bet with you. I'll bet with you all you want, because they're going to go to court or something. They sat back, this two-party Democratic Party because it's not a unified party. We have too many moderate Democrats. We should have been divided. The Trons and the Dems should have been divided long ago. And now you're telling me, oh, no, our Constitution won't even allow it. Well, what the hell kind of system is that?
No, I hear you.
I'm sorry,
You've been very clear about
revolution.
You've been very clear about your view on this. Just point out, I mean, because you and I don't completely agree on this, but I want everybody to hear you. But when you look at systems that have multi-party systems, they have their own problems. If you look at, say, Israel, the government there and the governance there, they have a very big multi-party system. And, you know, the coalitions that get made leave a lot of people out. That's true. And, you know, that's true in every. We have yet to design a perfect political system, Nancy.
Well, I was just going to say, nothing is ever going to be perfect.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, as always. I appreciate your reminding me in this new year that this is an ongoing issue.
It certainly is. I'm not worried about November. I'm worried about tomorrow, because I'll tell you what, you're right. I'm sure we're going to have elections, but as Stacey Abrams always says, Russia has elections too. But
yeah,
the problem
that's the kind that they want, for sure.
And
that's
quit blaming the voters for last year or even 10 years ago, because I'll tell you what, no one will ever convince me that any of these elections, since the not-so-Supreme Court selected W instead of letting us elect Gore, which the numbers show he was elected, there hasn't been a fair election since then. And then probably before that, I'm sure. But, you know, we don't have to go there either. I'm not being represented, and there's a lot of us that aren't.
I hear you. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you for letting me vent.
Nope, always. All right, so we're going to go to Dave next.
Hey, Edwin. Hey, I just seen a real good one earlier scrolling on the Facebook where this one guy had, the gentleman put that ICE agent was run over just like Trump was shot in the ear. That was the best one I've seen so far. I've never seen that little nick in his ear, but nobody's mentioned like when a lady backed up and she was already pulling forward. There was one of those ICE agents going for her car door, which had got her all, alarmed and, frightened, kind of screeching. And that's when then that other guy ran into the front and then, shot. And then if you looked at that pickup that was to the left of that guy that tried to yank the door open, another ICE agent, he jumped out, and then when he came down on the ground there, he had his pistol coming out, and then after that guy murdered her, he shoved holstered his pistol back up again. So,
trigger-happy fascists running around with his camera in order to take pictures for their marketing videos while he's shooting somebody. I mean, it's as disgusting a thing as there is, and the President of the United States and the Republican Party are trying to make excuses for it. I'm sorry, we've had police misconduct. Where most police are good. Occasionally you get like the Laquan McDonald case in Chicago, where you end up prosecuting the shooter, and he was found guilty. Or you have Derek Chauvin, a horrible guy who leaned, on George Floyd's neck, prosecuted. Sometimes, but they were even trained, and these terrible things happen. Here, you have untrained people, overarmed, running into cities, causing chaos, and then shooting people because they can. And the President of the United States, instead of saying we're going to hold them accountable, says shoot somebody else. We're going to stand behind them. Yeah. It's dangerous. It's disgraceful. They should be all thrown out for many reasons, but this one alone is sufficient.
Well, Edwin, if you remember, in his first term, they had that murdering SEAL, Eddie. I think it was Eddie Gallagher.
And he pardoned him.
Iraq, and he murdered that. Pardon? Yeah. Well, he had. Yes. Well, he had also did a command influence too, because they had busted this guy, a rank, and then Trump had pressured the Navy and all of these guys to give him his rank back, and like a week or so later, he got to retire out as a chief, a master chief. But he clearly murdered that one Iraqi.
Yeah,
that time.
Absolutely.
And,
Donald Trump does not care about human life, and he wants to be on the side of the person who's doing the shooting. And you know what?
Hey, Edwin, I'll close you with this one. That you're talking about satire. There was one yesterday, and I looked today. This thing is still going around more about a simple diplomatic solution for Trump to get Greenland is Baron Trump to marry Princess Isabella of Denmark. That suggestion implies Denmark would give over the territory of Greenland as a dowry.
Yeah,
of course.
Great.
A lot of the Trumpies are all for it. They just, this is great, but these others said that nations aren't meant to exchange, through marriage. This ain't the 1400s, but like I say, this thing started taking fire on a different, magazine or whatever. So this goofy guy might still try that. I guess they still got meetings again next week. They're going to go back to Greenland. So, I mean, Jesus, this guy is amazing.
They do not care if NATO goes down. They would be happy.
No. Oh, that'd be Putin. That'd play right in his pocket because that's what he wants. And
yes.
And Trump said in the first term that he didn't like NATO. He didn't want it. Remember? He wanted us out. So. And anyway, all right. Let me get off so somebody else gets their time.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
All right. Be well.
Yep. All right. Let's head west and Paul.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Edwin. I think many of the underpinnings of the American Charter are coming unglued, and this week, I think, maybe for the first time, it resembles starting to resemble anarchy as much as fascism. Certainly, in the executive branch, it is anarchy, and of course, the Congress is MIA, and you cannot just repurpose components of an engineered system, a bridge or whatever, and then say, I want it to work this way and not have the damn bridge just fall in the water, right? You can't do that and actually act like it's still there. I see things, and I think coming to some real threshold of some catastrophic moments in the next coming, certainly on the way to the election. When Trump said, did you hear this? I heard one report, and I was occupied this week in some ways, but one report that I took this before the holidays. You watch. He tore down the East Wing. He's planning to tear down the West Wing, too. And I heard a report that said that Donald Trump is considering tearing down the West Wing.
Yep.
And, I have to wonder when it cannot just you cannot just propagandize your way out of all of this when there are video that you can't just tell people, no, you didn't see what clearly happened, and because the rest of the world is watching, the rest of the world does have an effect. I think that the Republicans in the Congress must be both chambers of Congress. Some of them have to be having this kind of out damn spot moment, this Lady Macbeth having been accessory and enabler to murder. They must be recognizing that and seeing that, there are regrets on the way here. And all of this has a momentum that you cannot just stop it on a dime. This thing is going to get to be the point where there's a runaway point where you wish it would stop right now, but it's not going to. And I think Trump is certainly at that point. I mean, he said, what are my limits? My own sense of morality. Well, we know what his standard of morality is, right?
Doesn't have
the standard of morality is, first of all, he's a convicted fraud, a 34-count convicted fraud.
No, he doesn't have one.
He doesn't have any. No. If that's his own idea of what his limits are, and others don't. And others in his party
let
don't
me go back to your other
that.
point, Paul. Let me go back to your other point. The momentum this division and violence is taking feels like the period in the run up to the Civil War, where open hostility broke out in Kansas, whether Kansas would enter the nation as a free or a slave state, and one of the slave party shot a free stater. Then they got the judge to arrest another free stater instead of the guy who did the shooting, and that led to increased violence, increased attacks. At the time, though, the free side won, and they didn't win by killing everybody. They won by organizing, and the state entered as a free state. Now, to get to your point about that takes on a life of its own, it did, and we ended up in a civil war because the slave side started one. They would not accept the will of the people.
Right.
They said, "Oh, we lost an election. We're going to fire on Fort Sumter." So we have the life is of its taking on its own is happening on the right, and this agenda of the governments that says it's okay to shoot Americans and we're going to stand behind the people who does is disgusting to almost every American, but it is further radicalizing a small group on the right, and I agree with you, it's terribly dangerous.
Yeah, I see that part. Well, I mean, it doesn't take, what's the old song? One bad apple is enough to spoil the whole bushel. I mean, it doesn't take.
Particularly if he's president.
Yeah, it's not always you don't need a whole 85%. 85% of the people in your class to be the disruptors. Just one, right? And that's what's happening here. And it's, like you said, especially the president. But there is going to be an out of control. Before the train goes off the track, off the rails, there is this runaway point until it goes off and crashes. And I think we are approaching that threshold. And I think even, if you've ever been in an accident, a car accident, I've been in a serious car accident, and before it happened, I had that just moments before that you knew that this is going to happen, right? Mm. And it's like you regret your life flashes before your face. You regret how this happened. Right, all of it, and then it does happen, and I think it's happening to some Republicans. They have got to be, because not everybody in the Republican Party is has been there before Trump. Not all of these people are absolute MAGA waste cases that they're not the extremists, but they were willing to go along. They do not have the courage of their convictions to not go along. So they've got to be getting plenty worried. They can't all be this stupid. I don't believe it. I can't believe it. There the MAGA is, but there are members of the Senate, of the U.S. Senate, that are Republicans who were around before Trump. They can't all be. They're not all that stupid, and they've got to be seeing what's going on.
Well, I don't care what they see. They got to start acting. Hey, I'm going to go because I'm going to try and get a couple more before we leave. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
You bet.
Jeff, I got about a minute for you and a minute for Bill. So go for it. Sorry, Paul. Bill.
All right. Thanks. Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Real change isn't going to occur until we change the way we think. And I think when we look at politics and as far as left, right, I think those terms are obsolete now. I think what makes more sense. Yeah, I think it's more top to bottom. And I think it all comes down to facts, the American people having access to facts. And that really comes down to the media that we have in this country. And specifically, I would hope whatever Democrat takes power would understand the importance of this. And I think one first step we could take is to enforce antitrust laws when it comes to the media. And I think that's important.
Thank you, Bill. I agree. And that's going to be our last word for today. Or Bill, right. I appreciate that very much, but it's going to be our last word. Thank you all for being part of this show. I will see you next week. I hope that between now and then, it is a less fraught week than the one we just had. But either way, and in the name of Renee Good, get out there, hold your head up high, and say this is not acceptable.